Everything you need to know about Russian nukes. This is what we will talk about today. Truth about Russia and Ukraine, part 4. The nukes. In this one video, you will find out everything you need to know on the topic. Today we will talk about nukes. And by the way, would you like to buy a paperclip for $30,000 US? No, I didn't think so. But it's worth to ask. Today I will explain you why I'm talking about this. In the first part of the video, I will talk about generally known facts. But in the end of it, I'll tell you my own research and the information many of you, if not all of you, have never knew before. So I would suggest please stick until the end. Let's go! Hello there, I'm Elena, welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share the videos. Let's make truth available to everyone. And just a reminder for some people, and mostly for the people who are new to the channel, I'm glad to see you all here, but please keep in mind that if I use some sort of a source as a source of information, this is just one source I picked out of hundreds if not thousands I researched. It's not like the only source I find and using it for my video. This is not the case. This is the fourth part of a series exploring the challenges Ukraine and Russia face on the battlefield and beyond. As someone who has been researching the war in Ukraine for over a decade, I understand the importance of reliable information. This video focuses on nuclear weapons and Putin's threats to the world. Let's start with Ukraine. This part will be extremely short, since Ukraine doesn't have nuclear weapons. In December of this year, previous year, 2024, was 30 years anniversary of the Budapest Memorandum. This is one of the pictures of the time. Because in 1994, Ukraine, Russia, Great Britain and the United States signed the Budapest Memorandum, under which Ukraine surrendered the world's third largest nuclear arsenal in exchange for security assurances. China and France also provided separate commitments. Even Putin himself affirmed Ukraine's borders in 2008 interview, stating that there were no territorial disputes or basically any problems with Ukraine whatsoever. This is the memorandum itself. It is very short, and you're welcome to read it for yourself and find out what it was all about. Ukraine's decision to sign the memorandum was an unprecedented case of nuclear disarmament. And here are all the signatures. I agree with Maria Avdeeva on this. Just read the Budapest Memorandum. 6 short paragraphs. And Russia has broken every single one. Why would anyone believe Russia will keep any agreements without it being backed by decisive force? At the time of signing the memorandum, Ukraine had the technology, weapons and expertise to maintain nukes, but voluntarily give them up. They gave them up. Today, Ukraine has no nuclear weapons, but retains scientists who once developed them for the USSR. Since Russia violated not only the Budapest Memorandum, but at least 400 other agreements, Ukraine has no reason to remain nuke-free, if it chooses otherwise. However, Ukraine currently seeks security guarantees through NATO and alliances with the democratic nations, rather than developing nuclear weapons. Which, keep in mind, Ukraine can do. Russia can't. Because most of the scientists who were developing nukes for the USSR and missiles were from Ukraine. And this is the example of Ukraine disarmament. And here goes poof, all the Russian fairy tales about oh so aggressive Ukraine, oh so bad Ukraine. Ukraine had the nukes and Ukraine gave them up. And Russia attacked Ukraine. You have full my playlist on the war in Ukraine in 2014, when it actually started. You're welcome to watch that. And here's my video. Putin admits Crimea belonged to Ukraine. August 30th, 2008. So Putin, even he wasn't the guy who signed the Budapest Memorandum, Yeltsin was. He agreed with it and he said literally that there is no problems with Ukraine whatsoever. So at this point, we will not talk anymore about Ukraine. Ukraine doesn't have nukes. Now let's talk about Russia. Russia's nuclear arsenal and the myth of its strengths. During my speech, I'll show you some footage. This is one of the most terrifying photographs in human history. This spot is the shadow left by a person as a result of a nuclear explosion. For decades, the largest countries were smart enough not only not to use nuclear weapons, but not even to threaten with them. And Russia isn't smart enough. Russia is threatening the world, and in this video you will see right now whole bunch of Russian politicians, from Solovyov, propagandist, Putin himself, Medvedev, everybody. They keep rattling that nuclear saber and keep threatening the world. Include Simonyan in the end of the video, of that short clip, which is literally proposing to use nukes on Russian territory above Siberia. Guess what? Siberian people wasn't happy about that. And she got a big backlash with that. Because she proposed, let's make thermonuclear blast over Siberia. Nothing gonna happen, nothing to worry about, literally. The stupidity of this is unbelievable. Putin's Russia violated the Budapest Memorandum in 2014 and initiated an unprovoked aggressive war in Ukraine. And in 2022, it launched a full-scale invasion of the country. Despite being the aggressor, Putin blames the West for everything, always suffering massive military losses, up to 11,370 casualties per week. I'm reminding everyone that Russia is not the USSR. The USSR once had 14% share of the world economy. Russia, before its invasion of Ukraine, accounted just for 2%, now even less. The Soviet Union had a massive, well-equipped army, while Russia is running out of tanks, ammunition, and basic military supplies. Soldiers report that half of Russian tanks can't move and the other half can't shoot. And this was in 2022, when Russia still had the tanks. Russia is not a superpower. It doesn't have the same power of influence in the world. It is like a Pomeranian dog compared to an elephant. It's loud and can still be a serious threat, but it is no longer commands the same power or influence over the world affairs. Today, Russia resembles the USSR primarily in its propaganda, imperial ambitions, and aggression towards democratic countries. Almost exactly as before I was born. In this video, Russian politician Khodorkovsky, which Putin put to jail for years, asking people, are you in right mind? Putin can't win the war in Ukraine, but he's a dictator and can't admit that he was wrong. He's already turned Russian economy on the war path and refuses to back down. He's using nuclear threat to intimidate some democratic countries whose leaders actually care about what their voters think and want, unlike Simonyan, who just proposed to nuke Siberia. Key facts about Russian nuclear arsenal. In this part of the video, I want to recommend you a really good video by William Spaniel, Is Russian Nuclear Weapons Arsenal Broken? One of the main key facts, as William Spaniel pointed out in his video, Russia possesses 5,580 nuclear warheads as of 2024. And it's the largest stockpile in the world. 1,710 are ready to use, supposed to be ready to use. 2,670 are in storage, and 1,200 are being phased out, decommissioning. Russia's arsenal includes large strategic nukes meant for city destructions, and around 1,000 tactical nukes for battlefield use. This is a short summary of Spaniel's video, along with my comments based on my personal experience as a scientist from the USSR and Russia, as well as my extensive research on the Russian war in Ukraine. Basically, Russian nukes may not even work properly. Nothing lasts forever. Fresh bread, for example, can quickly turn into moldy one, basically in a very short period of time. Nuclear bombs degrade over time and require very costly maintenance. Each bomb needs at least $100,000 US in tritium replenishment every 10 years. And that's just one of thousands of critical components. Many of us think that the biggest cost of nuclear weapons is building them, but actually maintaining them is much more expensive over time. For example, the United States spent $51 billion on the Manhattan Project to develop nuclear bombs, but $821 billion by 1996 just to maintain them. One major cost is tritium, a key component of nuclear weapons. It decays over time, basically its half-life 12.5 years, and needs to be replaced regularly. Tritium is extremely expensive, about $30,000 US per gram, the weight of a paperclip. since each bomb needs about 3 grams, and so basically 3 paper clips you need for each bomb. Russia must spend around $100,000 per bomb every 10 years, just for tritium alone. And this is just one of thousands of parts that need upkeep. Since nuclear bombs require thousands of precisely functioning components, and even a small malfunction can prevent detonation. At minimum, every nuclear weapon in Russian arsenal should have gone through 2, if not 3, refurbishing processes since the fall of the Soviet Union. Corruption in Russian military is huge. We will talk about it more later. But now what you need to know that if Russians stole armor plates from bulletproof vests and replaced them with wood, what do you think happened to nuclear maintenance funds? The same corruption that left Russian tanks useless could also affect its nukes. Missile failure rates are high. At the start of the war, Russia's conventional missiles had a 20 to 60% failure rate. If this applies to nuclear missiles, many could fail before reaching their targets. But even if only 10% of Russia's nukes work, that's still more than China's entire arsenal. So the threat remains real, according to Mr. Spaniel. Russia has not tested a nuclear weapon since 1990. Without testing, there is no guarantee its warheads are functional. Experts believe Russia recycles tritium from old weapons, which could keep some operational, but overall maintenance remains a mystery. Again, as the Spaniel is saying. Since I'm not Mr. Spaniel, this is not a mystery to me. I am from the USSR and Russia. For this part, would be my comment. Corruption and nuclear deception, or nuclear bluff. Russian corruption, of course, and Russian nuclear bluff. For this, I will use some footage from the movie made by Mirovich Media, The Black Holes of the Cold War, which he's showing Soviet military bases and abandoned nuclear sites where the Russian missiles were stored and so on. I will tell you right away off the bat. The very idea that Russia is spending $100,000 per bomb every 10 years is laughable, is just incredibly ridiculous. Before 2022, no one in Russia believed that nuclear war is possible in general, period. There is no way. No one would believe that it can happen. Russian soldiers stripped stored tanks for anything valuable and even looted their own equipment. If they did this to the weapons they expected to use, imagine what happened to nukes they assumed would never be used. There is nobody would think that it ever gonna be used, period. So they knew that the tanks, that the machine guns or anything like that will be used for 100% sure. It's either will go to Africa so Wagner can use it, or it will be sold to somebody without any even massive scale war. And again, you have to provide the weapons for the Russian forces in Ukraine, which pretend to be separatists and so on. This will definitely be used. Nukes will not. And the very idea that somebody would spend money, that kind of money, to upkeep them, it's just insane. And any comments which I saw in the video of Mr. Spaniel about, oh, for the nuclear weapons it have to be inspections, that the government will make sure that they work in something like that, of he mentioned. The people, Russian officers, like for example Timur Ivanov, which was deputy defense minister, deputy of Shoigu basically, who stole millions from the military budget, can easily bribe or threaten nuclear inspectors who sign in false reports claiming Russia's arsenal is in good condition. This isn't just my speculation. Gulagu Net, a Russian investigative project led by this man Vladimir Osechkin, I talked to him about him in my previous videos, exposing grand corruption in the Russian military for over 12 years. Just recently, General Kuznetsov and ex-deputy defense minister Timur Ivanov, which I just showed to you, were arrested, while their families rushed to sell out of elite real estate. Basically $125 million some of their special cottages cost. Gulagonet also documented how Russian officers have sold nuclear secrets. There is different videos, which, as I say, I use many sources, saying that Russian officers basically sold Russian nuclear secrets for the highest bidder. On my YouTube channel, Enough of Propaganda, I have covered the catastrophic state of Russia's nuclear storage and nuclear waste management. The truth is that Russia's nuclear infrastructure has been deteriorating for decades. Let's look a little bit into history. In his 2017 Valdai Club speech, Putin accused the United States of exploiting Russia's post-Soviet nuclear disarmament. What he didn't mention was that in the 1990s, Russia was on the brink of nuclear disaster, and Western nations, including United States, Canada, the UK, Norway, and Japan, spent $17 billion to prevent an environmental catastrophe. Abandoned Soviet nuclear submarines leaked radiation into the ocean, and unemployed nuclear scientists were at risk of selling their knowledge to rogue states. Western oversight was necessary to ensure nuclear safety. Putin twisted these facts to portray Russia as a victim, but in fact, the countries did not trust Russia, corrupt Russia to look after nuclear disarmament, and they were right. This is why they were allowed to visit Russian states where the disarmament was happening, when there was decommissioning and so on, to make sure that Russia is doing things properly. After that, it was cancelled, it was stopped. They was not allowed to do it anymore. And guess what happened? In my book about future of Russia, I wrote about it. For example, Andreev Bay nuclear accident happened. This happened in February 1982. About 700,000 tons of highly radioactive water leaked into the Barents Sea during that time. That was a huge environmental disaster. There is a whole Wikipedia page dedicated to decommissioning of Russian nuclear power vessels. And as a Canadian, ask farmers in Saskatchewan, we, Canadian people, paid our taxes, which wasn't me at the time because I was still in Russia, but Canadian people paid their taxes to basically wipe Russians' rear end, provide toilet paper to wipe it, to clean up nuclear disasters and nuclear waste in nuclear submarines, which Russians basically dump on the shores and let them rot and deteriorate, creating nuclear disaster and leak into the water and so on. This article from The Guardian, Russia begins cleaning up Soviet's top-secret nuclear waste dump. When the Soviet Union collapsed, a vast storage of spent nuclear fuel was abandoned in the Russian Arctic as an environmental disaster waiting to happen. Decades later, an international cleanup has finally begun. So, foreign countries paid Russia to properly remove nuclear waste and so on. This article will tell you more. Dismantling Russia's nuclear subs, new challenges to non-proliferation. Western nations bore this economical and financial burden, while Russia, despite its economic struggles, continued investing heavily in its military. And now Russia is threatening the world with the nukes they bought for the money they saved thanks to the Western nations who helped Russia to do that nuclear disarmament and destroying nuclear weapons properly, dismantling them and so on. So while we all were paying for Russia to clean it up, they just saved the money and used them to produce more weapons, and now Putin and his cronies are threatening the world with nukes almost on a daily basis, every week anyways. Bottom line, Putin is bluffing about nukes. Putin is lying about everything. He lied about army, he lied about economy, and he is lying about nukes. And this is how it is. He lied before, he is lying now. He is lying all the time. And hopefully, finally, everybody will get that idea in their head. There is no point to trust Putin on anything whatsoever. And that does not mean he wouldn't find a few functional nukes, but it does mean that Russia's nuclear threats are largely a bluff. And they can't even produce more. The Oreshnik failed. The Sarmat, they failed to launch that. They failing all the time. Because people who were building those nukes for the USSR were Ukrainians. They were building missiles, they were building nukes. Russians can't even build them now. As Ukrainian President Zelensky said, every day Russia attacks Ukraine with drones, missiles, and aerial bombs. This week alone, there have been hundreds of strikes on our cities and communities. Nearly 50 missiles, around 660 attack drones, and more than 760 guided aerial bombs launched by the enemy against our people. And they bombing civilians. Russia will not stop on its own. I agree with him on that. And the world must force it to end this brutal and unprovoked aggression. Strengthening our defense is absolutely necessary. We need better protection, air defense systems, long-range weapons, and sanctions pressure. All of this helps save lives here in Ukraine. And I agree with that. The only way to prevent World War III or nuclear war is to help Ukraine defeat Putin as soon as possible. Putin doesn't need a reason to escalate. He's a dictator. He will do whatever he wants, whenever he wants. The sooner he is removed from power, the better for everyone, including the Russian people. Please help Ukraine. Thank you for watching. Learn the truth and stay informed. Have a great day. See you later.